For this special board meeting of the Hillsborough School District for November 3rd, 2023. It's 3:02, and a quick roll call starting with Alex. Just who you are.
My name is Alex Brewster. I am junior student and I'm junior student representative and I come across the high school.
My name is Dennis and I'm the senior student.
Pardon, just quickly. I'm Janet Olaja, District 2.
I'm Dr. Constable Rosa and I'm superintendent. And the voice District 4.
Dave Larson, District 5, and understand our president is probably going to walk in the door momentarily. So I start with welcome everybody to our budget discussion, and just walk in the door.
Sorry, really.
You just finish the roll call so you can
Great.
say your name and go.
Hello, Carly Hoover, data pronouns, Director of District. Okay, so sorry.
Did it welcome us over on Google?
All right, so take a motion to approve the agenda. So,
Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
All right, the agenda is approved. Also, that was brings us to the budget work session, which is why we're here. Just wanted to name again, this is our second work session has been structured in this way, and I found the first one to be just so informative, so productive, so rich in conversations. I'm really excited for this this framework going forward, and particularly around the budgeting, knowing that there's just a lot of dynamic things happening with our budget right now. So so with that, pass it over to the team.
Thank you for spending time to join us this afternoon. So I'm going to take you through where we are at financially right now. And to start with, jumping right in. On the second slide, we have not closed last year's books yet. We won't until November 15th, but it's become apparent to me that in all likelihood will end with a negative ending fund balance. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.3 million negative, or negative 2.2%. What that means for us is that it will automatically invoke binding conditions. We'll receive a notification 5 business days after November 15th, roughly plus or minus. And then the following week, we at the school level will have a meeting with a representative from the PICSD to walk us through what we need to do.
When you say school level, you mean district?
District level, yes, administrative building. What that will probably be is a 2-year plan. They have 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, 5-year plans. Ours will probably be a 2-year plan. With board help, we'll stay on track. We'll get the plan, we'll stay on track. And we will exit to financial stability in 2 years.
Have you heard of any other districts that are ending this way?
Yes, there are 3. There's Mount Baker for sure. And the other 2 slipped me, and then there's some that are.
What kind would it be?
Miracle.
Oh, did you say Mary?
I didn't.
Oh,
Mount
Mary,
Baker.
yeah.
Yeah, Miracle one.
And yes, there's a really good article by another reporter stuff in the Everett Herald, and he interviewed TJ Kelly, who's the chief financial officer at OSBI, and he's anticipating by the end of the year, there'll be 10 to 20 other districts in the state in binding conditions, so. This is a big issue statewide, we've been discussing it a lot in Wasta, so it's not just us.
That's what I wanted to
In
get.
some ways, it's nice and comforting, and at the same time, you know,
It's,
we still are here.
I can tell you, it's good that we're not alone, because if we were alone, we would probably get blown up. The fact that we're not alone means the legislature is gonna be forced to pay some attention to this issue.
So, talk a little bit about the intra-fund loan. We had 2 intra-fund loans last school year. We paid one off in November. In all likelihood, I'll ask you for another intra-fund loan. I don't know how much it is going to be, but in all likelihood, larger than the one we just had. I'll talk a little bit about the budget as we go through, but as kind of as a summary. While I meet with each budget stakeholder to determine risk versus this year's budget and determine what our exposure is going to be rolled up, just looking at some macro numbers, I've got a bit of a concern that our actual expenditures will exceed our budget expenditures. And that would, if that happens, would require a supplemental budget.
They're saying about 22, 23 school year.
23-24, the year that we're in.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the things that are indicating that to you?
I'll talk about those a little bit further. Okay.
Chief Woodard, could you just, I know there's a lot of trepidation from the community, and we have it addressed here, but I just want to make sure that people know, what binding conditions does not mean, right, for folks, so there's, making sure that people know that it's really about us working in partnership with Puget Sound DSB and OSBI. That they will be supporting us, with oversight, and, but basically, just to let everyone know, the work is ours to do. It doesn't mean that, any district's gonna take us over, it doesn't mean that, that we are gonna meet any of those things, it doesn't mean those things, it means that we have to do certain things in place to ensure that we meet payroll, to ensure that we improve our budget process over the next 2 years. And so I just want to make sure I state that for the community and for staff, that's what that means. And if you refer back to my original letter, I actually have an attachment about what binding conditions actually are. So if you refer back to the original letter in September, there was a PDF or a PowerPoint connection that people can go back and look to, and that's directly from OSPI. So.
Maybe just to add one thing to Jen, one of the things that, I think it's, particularly we're thinking about the budget, which is so complex, and, I think even for, for me as a board member, there's still things that I'm learning, right, of it, and, I think, to, avoid, or try and minimize, rumors that may be happening about what all of this might mean, or what impacts this might have. If there are curiosities or questions, please direct them to superintendent, and to, Mr. Woodard. That way we can, really actually get those things addressed. And it can, again, kind of minimize some of the angst or feelings that might be coming up. I think it's important that as we're moving through this process, where we are trying to be as transparent as possible by having these spaces, these work sessions, are really by all the letters, the communications that are going out, and we really encourage folks to read what's there, right? To take all the information that we're giving them, and if you need follow-up information, reach out about that. Try not to fill in missing pieces with what you think might be happening, or uncertainties, again, just because we've all got to move through this together, and we are really trying to be as transparent as possible. So I just wanted to add that, and namely, we can avoid rumors happening if we're just asking for clarity when we need clarity about things.
Dr. Pedrosa brought up a really important point that I want to emphasize. Going into binding conditions, we will pay every single employee, every single paycheck. Every vendor gets paid. We are backed by state of Washington. And as long as the state of Washington has funds, we have funds. Everybody gets paid.
Yeah, I think I was gonna make that point, and also, you know, in reality, what it's gonna require is as they work with ESG and OSPI, so there's gonna be some more reports I'm sure you're gonna have to file and all that kind of stuff with them to ensure them that we're doing the things that need to be done, but that's probably that will have an impact on our staff,
Yes.
particularly the administrative staff.
Yes, yes. So where we are at, as I've had conversations with individuals, not just here, but I mean, it's just common. Human nature. When somebody feels, you know, here's bad news. Oh my God, it's my fault. What should have I have done differently? So we're not, there's no blame for any of this. I want to be clear on that. There are, as we go forward, some learnings. And I've listed some really warning indicators.
Which document are you on?
Page 3 of the document that says budget working session. Our basic education model basically says that our revenue goes up and down with IPD. It's like an inflation factor. Every year, IPD. If in a single year, we sign a contract that is higher than IPD, we never catch up. There'll be 10 years we've never caught up. If we have multiple contracts over multiple years that are greater than IPD, that's always out there. So that's an early indicator whenever we at the school level sign a contract that obligates us to more than inflation IPD, or when the board signs something. So it's an early warning, some sign.
I think there's a little more nuance to that. The other part of that is when we're talking about contracts, particularly staff contracts, we need to have competitive salaries, and that's actually written in the contract. And so if, you know, other districts, and by competitive, I mean the districts around us.
Yep.
And so if they sign contracts that are, you know, above the IPD, we're kind of locked into doing the same. So I just want to make sure people understand the system a little bit.
And an early warning sign as well. When other folks surrounding districts sign contracts that are higher than IPD, we now can see the future for what happens to us financially.
Which is why this is not only our issue, it's multiple districts.
OSPI produces a financial scorecard. They have financial indicators. It's a public document. That's one way to. That's another way to see where we are headed. Declining enrollment. When it is not matched with the with an equal amount of a reduction in expenditures is an early warning sign. From 2017 through 2020, 3-year period, where student enrollment was over 2,700. And then it dropped, and then it dropped. We're currently around October, we're at 2450, 2453 to be precise. During that time, our expenditures went up, so as enrollment went down, expenditures should have gone down, but they actually went up. Again, that's an early warning.
I'm not sure that it's fair to, you know, if you're talking about just flat dollar expenditures, there's always IPD going on, so, but if the way I would put it more is if staff positions are not going down and enrollment goes down, then you're in trouble. I mean, if you're talking about flat dollar amounts are pretty, you know, are trending up just because of inflation.
It is, but it at the same point, it's an indicator.
Yeah, it's an indicator, yeah. I did want to point out, when you're talking about financial indicators, so the big one, that's a weighted combination of about 4 indicators. The big one that I'm always looking at is fund balance. If our fund balance is less than 6%, which is our board policy, which it has been for a number of years, well, 2 years now.
Yeah,
Then that's a big indicator.
thank you. Speaking of ending fund balance. The monthly budget status report has a chart that shows the ending fund balance by month. And it actually has a chart going for several years back, month over month. Last year, it showed a negative ending fund balance below 0 3 months in a row, January, February, and March. Again, it's an early warning sign that we're headed in the wrong direction. When the school comes to the board to ask for an interfund loan, it's an early sign that things are not headed in the right direction. And today's point again on ending fund balance, I've got a chart up here. When the ending fund balance starts to trend down, if action is taken to either stabilize it or to bring it back up, then that's great. If no action is taken, it'll continue to go down. So we dropped here roughly 5 percentage points, and then looking at the number, this is macro. And I know a lot of people work every single day to make the right smart decisions. But as far as what I can see from the macro level, no major changes were made to the cost infrastructure. And instead of going down 5 percentage points year over year, it went down closer to 6% year over year. The time to make changes for the year that we're in now, it's not on the chart. For the most part, those were last spring. Those include the staffing positions, primarily because around 80% of our expenditures are salary. And the majority of those, after a certain date, they're basically locked in for the year. There's some exception. Somebody leaves, you might not fill the position. Some positions are in contract, but for the most part, in the spring is when you lock in cost structure for the next year. So the trend here down 5 percentage points, down 6 percentage points without major restructuring in the spring. The trajectory is down. And our problem right now is figuring out what we can do to get our heads back above water.
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer for that, and I probably won't for a while, and that answer is going to come from everybody in this room and beyond.
I do want to make a couple of comments, because I've been, I think it's important for us, particularly as a board, to understand, what we need to be looking for, going forward in particular. And, we've forever, once I've been on, had this 6% fund balance requirement, and, there've been several years, actually those years going back to 16, 17, 18, all that, where, we were presented a budget in August usually, that called for that had a fund balance of less than 6%. And, that was always a concern to me, but, as we see in 18, 19, 19, 20, at the end of the year, somehow magically, the fund balance was way over. So at that point, I started saying, in my mind, okay, you present me a fund balance in August that's below the 6%, but don't worry, because it'll fix itself. Well, that stopped happening this last year. We were presented, actually, this is in September, the first time we've been presented with a negative fund balance. The last number we saw was like 1.1%, which it turned out was almost exactly what it was budgeted for, the previous August. So, so that tells me, okay, the game has changed here. We're not, for whatever reason, I'm not an accountant, but for whatever reason, the game has changed. So it signals, and I used to ask, okay, so why is it that, we come with this budget with a low fund balance, and then at the end of the year, we're in good shape? And, the answer was a few things. There's some revenue sources that, frankly, we don't know when you're trying to make the estimate back in, August. We don't know, and particularly something like, the safety net funding, for example, such education, they don't even pay that until the end of the year. So we're kind of guessing. And there's a bunch of things like that over the years that, when I ask those questions, well, we don't know from OSBI and what we're going to get till later. So that's one thing. The second thing is, from the CFO perspective, we always want to make a conservative estimate, because we don't want to get caught, in the situation that we're in now. We try to avoid that. And so what does conservative estimate mean? So there's kind of two sides to that. One side is from just an accounting perspective. We want to, reduce expenditure, reduce budgeted expenditures so we don't get caught. Now, what does that translate to in this district? In this district, what it means, because of the staffing, it essentially means less support staff. And we know that, our students, our population, our demographic with, high students experiencing homelessness, CLO, refugees, that whole list, they need more support, not less. So, there's this gentle balance between conservative is good on the finance side. I mean, I used to be concerned when I saw some of those high fund balances. I'm thinking, oh, we left, some support that we could have given our students. We left that money on the table. Not a good thing. So that's, the balance, and we're stuck with at the state level, as I've been preaching for years, this funding system that is not student needs based. And so we're, stuck in the middle of that. And so we're trying to find this balance. And I think, from, some talks I had with you, so last year, we, people are going to say, well, you guys mismanage your funds, or whatever. And I don't, first of all, we've had during this period clean audits. So that's the other, kind of early, I don't think it's listed here, but it's something I'm looking for. okay, are the auditors finding some problems with the way money is being, and we've had clean audits for a number of years now, so. Okay, so that says, the quote mismanagement is kind of like, we're spending money to help our students. Probably more than we had, which, that's not a good thing, but on the other hand, it's coming from a good place that we want to help our students. So anyway, I just want to kind of lay that out there because the source, and there are some, and I think you've indicated some controls that you're going to put in place, and that's appropriate. We need some of the controls to be a little bit tighter, but at the source of this whole thing is the fact that the state is not funding what our students need. And that's what's really why we're stuck in this bad situation. And it's interesting, the last CFO, used the term right size a lot. And I'm thinking about that term also, what does right size? Right size means fitting within, staffing within our money that we're getting allocated from the state. It doesn't mean, right in terms of giving the students what they need support. And so, we need to kind of be clear that when we say, right sizing, we're undoubtedly gonna have to, cut some staff positions. That's not because anybody thinks that's the right thing to do. It's because the state is not funding, what we need to support our students. So I just wanted to, throw that out there. Because, it's why I've been spending, particularly last year, trying to generate more support statewide, because as I say, it's just us, then the legislature can blow us off. It's just little who cares. But there is starting to become a lot more awareness of, I'm always looking for things that can have cross district. Like one of the things I'm working on is like the insurance costs. Our insurance costs are going through the roof, and it's not just us. I was looking, like our insurance costs over the last 3 years have risen 95%. Obviously, we need to be looking at why that is. The state average though is like 60%, but we're not wildly out. And I was looking at Federal Way, some of our neighbors, Federal Way is 108%, so they went up. There's other ones that Highline only 37, it's a mix. I had an idea that this might be related to the poverty. It's not. I did the statewide analysis and there's no relationship. So I'm still trying to figure out insurance costs, but that's a big one. Another one that I'm working on is the substitute teacher costs, which have skyrocketed for us and lots of other districts as well. And I think a lot of it's related to the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act, which we only get the state only gives us 4 substitute days, and we're up at 20, something like that. And other districts I'm hearing are in the 10 and 20. So that's another big issue that we're pounding away. And there's lots of districts that are in that. So anyway, it is as you said, Chair, there's a complicated issue, but I just want to make sure that first of all, people understand there's not any embezzling of money, there's not any fraud going on here. It's just the state is horribly underfunding, and what our students need, and we're working hard to try and get that in. And there is going to be unfortunately, some cuts of staff positions that we're going to have to make. I mean, when I think about what the board can do, the board you mentioned, in the spring. So there's 2 things. There's the RIF, the reduction in force number that we vote on every year, which when I think about last year was 4.5. Obviously, that wasn't enough. And then there's the budget approval in August, and those are 2. We're obviously going to have to make tougher looks at those, and particularly for me now that the budget, if you come in with a budget and tell me that it's going to be 1% unbalanced, I'm going to say no. You got to work harder at this, because if we're now in a world where you know, what it is and what the estimate is in August is what it is gonna be in the next August, then we're gonna have to start looking at that a lot closer. And actually, August is too late because because it's all related to staffing. And so in May, and this is gonna be tough on the CFO or it's gonna be in your seat, they're gonna have to come up with some really good estimate, which can be tough. And but we're gonna have, because that's when those tough decisions need to be really made. So anyway, that's obviously I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, but it's wanted to kind of set some of the context of some of the things that I'm looking at.
And I do want to reiterate, Dave's comment. Our intention, and I am speaking for every employee. And everyone that's associated with the school district, everybody's intent is to provide our students with the best possible learning environment. Regardless of any other financial difficulties. We gravitate towards this industry. For that one reason, we feel good when that happens. Everyone, board and everybody in the room to realize that regardless of where we are financially, our intention every day is students. It's important that when somebody has bad news, that they immediately share it. And it doesn't matter if it's just financial, anything that we do in life. It's like hot potato. You get bad news. As hard as it is, you share it with your loved one, you share it with your boss, you share it with others. You have to do that because you have a certain amount of time, and then the music stops, and if you're stuck with potato, that's not good. So Dr. Pedrosa, looking into the future, this is before I started, she sent a memo out to all employees. And she told them, among other things, and I'll quote it, the district is at risk of entering binding conditions. And she included an attachment which described what that was. I was hired at the basically around at the beginning of October. And we scrambled to find all the bills that we wanted to include into last year. And once we did that, there's a cutoff in the state on that day. And on the day that we could stop collecting invoices, I was able to run some numbers, and it became apparent to me of the risks that we had with binding conditions. I confirmed that with the representative from the PSESD immediately. In fact, we were sitting together. He's informed people on his end. Within hours, I was able to meet with Dr. Pedrosa, and in less than a day, Dr. Pedrosa communicated with the board president. As soon as I had an opportunity, and this was within about a week, I communicated with the state audit department, who's now kind of in a buzz because nobody has ever self-reported a risk of going into binding conditions, and they don't know how to handle it. As a result, you may have wondered why our audit is still open. We had an exit date set. When I first arrived, I was pushed back, and it's pushed back again because they're trying to figure out what to do with us. It's my understanding that other communications have taken places with other parties, and those are listed on the board. But I want to congratulate the board for their quick response. for having this public meeting. To once again, let everybody know where we are financially. There are no secrets. As easy as it is to keep them. We have a good culture of sharing information, and that's something to be commended. The next steps include input that we haven't received yet, and we encourage the input from everybody in this room. As always, every single day, every single year, we look at ways to maximize our revenues and to be smart with how we spend our money. It's just inherent in what we do. I believe that culturally we moved away from being as careful with our money as we should be. And that's something that we need to get back to doing. Next steps, and on that point, next steps are continuing to reinforce the control points that I have listed in an attachment. And then some. There's a lot of small ones that don't make it, and there's a lot of other ones that, as I uncover, we're addressing. But it will eventually get back to a fiscal control, which, and I'm going to back up a little bit. Throughout my careers with lots and lots of schools and colleges and profit centers, it was almost inevitable that if I saw an organization slipping financially, it was almost always also happening that they were at risk of slipping with the quality of what they were doing. They're so closely tied together. The discipline that comes with the one follows with the discipline for the other. And as we continue our focus on and our discipline on taking care of our students, I think that will also help us financially. For whatever reason, they're linked. I encourage the board to take another look at not only their board priorities, their board philosophy, to see if they still mesh with the financial conditions that we now find ourselves in. We'll continue to work with the SESD. We've been congratulated with how well we're working with them already. Dr. Pedrosa and I will be meeting with different staff groups, every staff meeting, answering questions, making sure that everybody knows everybody will get their paycheck. All the vendors that they work with will continue to get paid. And any other questions that arise. We will prioritize the equity analysis throughout all of our discussions and actions. One of the more near-term and concrete actions is that I will be meeting with each budget stakeholder as if we're going into a budget season. And we'll be talking line over line on an individual, looking at a trend. If an expense bumped up a little bit, what happened? If we missed our budget, what happened? Every single line, there are like 8,000 lines. And we'll look at the risk going forward. And during these conversations, I'll be able to better understand what our risk is for this coming year.
So I'm just gonna add, you kind of said that, you know, good financial control provides good quality product, in our case, you know, instructional and support students. And I think that's true up to a point.
True.
Because as I mentioned, a lot of what, you know, our students need is that, you know, human support from our very support staff, whether it be social workers, counselors, nurses, community liaisons, whatever, it's not on. And unfortunately, that list is the same list that's in danger because of when Esther dollars go away. So anyway, just that's in play as well. I mean, I agree with you that looking at the finances, but you know, because the big chunk of our is staff.
Yeah.
You know, that's where the big chunk is, so,
And things outside of our control.
yeah.
So some areas of opportunity. Especially for folks that are newer to this than others. One of the areas for us has always been to reduce our sped overspend. Historically, it's been around 30% of the monies that we receive for sped. Last year it was 6%. And this year it will probably be around that same amount. And you're probably wondering what happened, what changed. And I think that the answer is going to be that roughly 25% is in ESSER money. Save us.
And also, the state pushed a lot more money into special education.
Yep.
So this one is an area, again, when you use the word overspend, I think we need to understand that that means we're spending more than the state allocates to us, not that we're, you know, causing our safety or something like that. And so, and that is a hot topic, you know, you talked about in the last slide, between opportunities back there. So that SPED is a very hot topic still in Olympia, and they aren't done with it. And I've heard commitments, you know, the other issue is the cap, which we may very well exceed this year. Special ed director nodding, because we were right there, I don't know, anyway. And that's definitely going to be up on the list. So, you know, we'll be loud in support of that one. So, yeah, I just want to make sure that overspend is not mean.
I think it's not just about overspend for us, it's also about systemic improvement around how we, for example, safety net.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
looking at opportunities to get more safety net and reimbursements,
Yeah.
other reimbursements along the way. So it's about systemic improvements around that as well. So it's not just about, it's overspent to a point, it's the cap. And it's also our systemic systems that we're trying to improve within special education as well. It's all three of those things together, for sure.
And get some of that covered by Medicaid is another one. I mean, this is a complicated area.
Yeah.
And there's lots of opportunity.
And another opportunity for the district has been all of the ESSER funds this year, ESSER 3.
I guess that's the bottom of my question I want to ask. Do we know, have we identified all possible areas that we can, you know, move funding to ESSER 3 for out of our BEA? I assume we have, but I don't know. So that's still an open area.
I'll take a stab at this. Our chief academic officer has put together more of a macro set of costs that we'll spend all of our ESSER money this year. More work needs to be done to prioritize and to define costs. And it is somewhat time sensitive because if the ESSER 3 grant sunsets in August as we are currently being told we can plan ahead and do some fairly expensive ventilation projects. Because those have a long time range. To get OSPI approval, you have to go out for 3 bids, you have to follow the process, and then it's done. The strategy is, our chief academic officer strategy is to start that process, including the ventilation systems with the knowledge, and I think he's being real clever, with the knowledge, as we get closer to the end of spring, we may find that the sunset has been extended. At that point, we'll have had caveats in our contracts for ventilation systems. Might not do it. Because there might be a better way to serve those dollars directly on
Students, yes,
students.
sure.
And I also think for us, my worry is, yes, encumbering the ESSER funds for mitigations for certain pieces. And then just having to recognize the 1-year funds. So if there are current things in ESSER that we actually need brought back into the system, then that we have to be really strategic and thoughtful about then what is that replacing. So it's not just a 1-year problem to solve, it's actually a 2 to 3 year problem to solve. Because then that's gonna mean we have to do less with less of something else, or not at all. If we're going to be moving anything that is a critical component in ESSER back into our dollars for running the district. So I just want to make sure to keep everyone mindful about that too, because we have to look at that as well. And when we're planning whatever we are going to spend with ESSER, then we have to make sure that we have a strategy in place. Either it's 1 year only or it's not, and then we have to give up something else.
Yeah, it's almost, it's like that idea of like figuring out where we can use extra dollars, it's just like a Band-Aid for getting us through the year, right? But then knowing that, I mean, even if we get the last ESSER report we got, and just the number of positions alone that are supported by it, particularly thinking about the number of community liaisons, right, that are supported by that, which we know, I mean, among all those positions are so critical, but those are so important. So I mean, I agree, and I wonder like if there's ways that we could do that, but also really recognizing that it's just that's gonna help us get through this year, and that's it. It may not really help the long-term landscape of moving us out of this budget.
Well, and I think that's why the quality controls and the systemic efficiency piece is super critical. Because in bringing revenue back in and different things, because then we actually have money to work with that, right? And so it's not just planning for ESSER and planning for year 2, but it's also the systemic improvement pieces we have to do along the way as well. So we're having those conversations too.
Well, it sounds like based on some of the conversations and even like this list that there are a lot of opportunities.
There's lots of opportunities.
Embedding systemic things that are gonna continue to generate revenue long term. Which gives me some hope, that there have just been ways that we just haven't, for a variety of reasons, likely haven't been able to tap into that we maybe are now able to, so. That's
So
exciting.
good news and bad news.
Yeah.
It's got, there's a lot of moving parts, so.
Yeah.
And throughout the year, you'll probably pick up on the anxiety of the district on the ESSER cliff. The 25% of the amount of money that we spend on SPED that we are not reimbursed, that is now going into ESSER 3. Next year, that comes back into basic ed money. The filters that facilities is charging to ESSER 3, those come back into basic education. And that's in addition to the people that we already know. There's some MSOCs out there. And MSOCs is short for non-payroll costs.
I think it just, all of this reiterates your point and your point that it is a very complex endeavor. That we're trying to pull back those onion layers every step of the way and trying to make sure that we are really thinking, not just in your 23, 24, 24, 25, 25, 26, and ensuring that it's about the long-term longevity of the district, the fiscal health long-term is what we're really trying to prioritize.
Which is the point of maybe several legislators, some of them don't understand, oh, you guys, that's your dollars, what's your problem? No, talking about long-term fundamental structural system.
Yeah.
Keep harping on that, so, anyway.
Yeah.
And so speaking of long-term, the next point is our collective bargaining agreement, and not to elaborate on it. But I have that listed as an opportunity and a concern. Reductions in force, we talked about those happen in the spring, so probably not anything that we need to elaborate on now. We're definitely not in a position to make any recommendations. We do have a short-term increase in enrollment. And I'd like to commend Jan on all the work that she's doing. We have, I believe, as of today, it's 94 students that are in our school district. I'm not sure how long they'll be with us, if it's this school year or beyond. For purposes of this conversation, it's an opportunity, at least this year. We do have a longer term decline in enrollment, as I mentioned earlier, where we were over 2,700, and now we're 2,450.
But I will say that, that was one of the chief reasons that we had our decline in enrollment, because it corresponds almost exactly to Trump shutting down the borders. Because we used to have like 10% of our students were refugee students, and so that's a big chunk. And now the southern border is opening up. It was, there was some delay while COVID was going on, but now the southern border seems to be kind of wide open. So, in the meantime, we've become a more expensive place to live. So we'll see how many of them, get here. But the other thing about the enrollment too is, a lot of the folks that may be coming as refugees, asylum seekers, whatever, the numbers are good, but they also can come with a lot of extra needs, special ed. They could, we don't know where they're gonna end up. So they could be McKinney-Vento qualified, in which case that's another expense. So anyway, it's all gonna be a challenge. Like there's lots of moving parts.
Well said. We talked about enforcing control points. And if we do want to go through the appendix, we can talk more about that. District has expressed the desire to expand its community partnerships. We've already talked about pursuing additional grants. We've already talked about creating a fiscal culture. Dr. Pedrosa has been very diligent with us on the types of contracts that we're signing. And again, it's one of those things that you kind of do once a year. Most of these are one-year contracts. But as we go through a renewal, to consider maybe one contract versus many contracts. We'll continue to pursue those under Dr. Petrosa's leadership.
That's the other comment, because I had a conversation with Dr. Petrosa, community partnerships too. It's always great to have more of them, but if we can solve some of our issues within our current set of partnerships and expand, then we have less management issues, because the more you add on, and somebody on our side is going to have to oversee that. So to the extent we can get, our current partners to step up more, that's a good thing.
Yeah, definitely, and I know this is something that we talked about a little bit, the city of community partnerships, and making sure that like. So we fund a lot of the community partners to be in our schools, so really kind of looking at how can we potentially make sure that we have the right community partners that maybe take some of the financial burden off of the district. Because there are a lot of nonprofits, CBOs that have their own funding streams that can then come in and serve our youth, and fill some of the gaps that we're paying a lot. So that's, I totally agree with you guys, we don't necessarily need more, we need the right. Yeah,
Yeah, and we're evaluating all of them, external contracts, right, because. And some of them already were signed, right, so we're also evaluating them based on, constraints in terms of this year, so, and the number of students served. I mean, all of those pieces, and then I want to look at impact, right, impact, and alignment to our student plan, impact to students, you know, on and on, so. Those are, it's not just one thing, when you think about equity analysis, you know, what is the actual impact on students and families that actually get at what we want to do, and I will say, having worked in a district for a long time in schools. You know, sometimes we keep doing them because we have those relationships, which I think are really important. But I think that this is the binding conditions and all of this is an actual opportunity for us to say, we still value you as a partner, but we have to rethink what this is like. And I think that's just gorgeous saying it. We have to rethink all of it. And I think community will understand. That's my goal, is that community understands and that they work alongside of us, or at least to get us through the next 2 years.
We talked about subs a little bit, and Dave and I had a conversation regarding Apple Health and Medicaid data, that opportunity.
Yeah, but I add this because when I'm looking at is insurance costs, and again, that's not just unique to us, it's across a lot of districts, but at the same time, we do need to examine, and this is more of going forward, why, and this is I don't know if we ever had sat down with the risk pool and had a conversation about, I'm sure, yeah, exactly why are our insurance rates going up so much, and then some of them we can do something about, some of them we can't, to make sure we're addressing whatever. I know there's some steps taken to, you know, we had a couple break-ins of the cost rise school to very good equipment. And, you know, we need to make sure that doesn't happen.
Previous settlements, all of those things.
Yeah, previous
Impact
settlements,
all of
yeah,
those things.
yeah.
Years.
Yeah,
All of those things impact our current risk, the financial risk. And so, and that's why we're working with human resources on understanding some of those impacts. Because the more we can put our, again, internal controls around some of that, the less we have, that we can actually improve our risks, you know, the insurance.
just to give you an idea, so 3 years ago, our debt and the premium were 392,000. This year there's 764,000. That's a huge amount.
A lot. Yeah, I think we can talk through about maybe what that looks like in terms of the presentation, and understanding the risk and then the connection to some of the things that HR is actually doing to mitigate for some of those risks that they've already started doing. So,
And I will say there's a scary thing that's been going on in the legislature called prejudgment interest, which the attorneys are ruling at the thing, and what it is basically under the Me Too movement, a lot of things, sexual harassment issues, and we had a couple of that happened 20, 30 years ago. So the settlements were typically from the day of judgment, but now attorneys want to know, we want interest going back to when the acts, you know, the action happened, which could be 20, 30 years ago. That would just blow up the insurance system, and the attorneys need to have a very insistent lobby. That bill has been brought back several times, and they come back again this year, so anyway, stay tuned on that.
don't breathe. We are gonna do this together. We are in this together. We will be together.
Yeah, I just want to kind of reinforce that comment that to get through this, we're gonna need everybody, the administration, the associations, the board, you know, the staff, everybody's gonna need to be on this to do what our board philosophy says, and as I stated here, minimize impact on students.
Right.
Now, the next slide, there's a couple of things I want to point out. This is 2 years ago actual revenue on this side. And this is, these are our expenditures. 2 years ago actual. And then 22, 23, this is the year that we just finished. We're in the process of finishing, so the numbers will change. But there's not much wiggle room right now. Same thing revenue. 2022 for the expenditure. So this column is our budget for the year that we're in right now, 23, 24. And right, the side of it is where I think we're going to be. And the only thing that I've made so far is I bump up the enrollment. I probably did a little bit too aggressively. But that's the only thing. No expenditures associated with that. This number will change throughout the year. One thing that's from a macro perspective, again, not digging into numbers, there's a very good reason why it is the way that it is. But just looking at the numbers on the top side, if I look at the actual PEA dollars, $37.2 million, what we actually spent last year, again, still closing the books, but basically $32.2 million, assuming the costs go up 3.5%. We know some of our contracts are going to go up more than that. Just if it's just 3.5%, that gets us to 38.5 million. You'd say, well, the budget is 38.5. Budget's only 36.4, but 2 million short. That was on a macro side. It looks like we have a problem with the budget. A couple other things that are not grant related. We got food service and pupil transportation. Doing the same math. About $100,000 in food service and pupil transportation about $160,000. Before I get into the numbers, I'm thinking that we're going to have a problem, that I want to share that with you as well. Ordinarily, we would be covered if we can go up just a little bit. We're required by the state to budget capacity 2.5%. So perfect rule. The budget is absolutely perfect. And the budget says 1.6% for the year. If everything's perfect, you don't spend any of the capacity rules. That goes away. So that instead of 1.6, it's 1.6 plus 2.5 or 4.1. And we've always tried really hard. If you have something that's going over, you find something that's going under. Where the capacity is basically not touched. You keep your budget basically. And again, the reason it's in there is because the state requires it in there. So I'm thinking we have probably $2 million in the DEA plus another 100,000, 200,000 down here. The numbers are adding up to be more than our contingency of 1.69. If that is what happens, we will have more expenditures than what is in the budget. And that requires us as a district to submit a supplemental budget. And there's a process for that. There's a public hearing. There's resubmissions. It's kind of a big deal. But I wanted to let you all know that that is something that at this point seems more likely than not. But maybe not.
So how much, again, how much would that be for, how much?
Capacity 1.6 million.
Yeah,
We should look at the macro numbers.
yeah,
That might bring us to say 2.5 million. In addition to that. If we go for another grant. And we have expenditures related to that grant. Those come in as an expenditure. Generally, that can be covered by capacity, but if you've already used your capacity up here. That would be another reason why we would go for supplemental budget.
which isn't, that's not necessarily a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing.
It's a good thing, actually.
It's
I mean, we've done something that was in the past, I think normally because of a good thing, that's just a bad thing.
uh, Big questions or conversations on the numbers that are to see.
So as of now, the projected 23-24
Is
fund
budget,
balance is a little, is 0.7 negative.
And yes, and the only change was an increase in students, which would correspond to additional BEA revenue.
But
And I didn't put any additional costs to support those students. So the reality is, we'll
Yeah.
have some cost.
sure, yeah,
And as we go through and look at other cost lines, the numbers will change as well.
yeah, I mean, it's pretty safe to say if our increase in students can be, relative of immigration and asylum seekers, that there's gonna be not only regular costs, but additional costs.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
we need to get that into the
And it's
realistic picture, yeah.
possible that the additional costs this year would be supported with ESSER 3 funds.
Yeah, this year, yeah. Right. Good. Yeah.
That's the end of the presentation. I also attached an appendix with items that they're gathering input. Seem to be important to include in a package that was presented not only to the board but to the public. And if there's any questions on any of those.
Yeah, I like those, I like the reading through the control points for both, good. You should have done it before, I was seeing that one, but anyway, we're looking at.
Yeah, that's to say, there'll be more down the road, maybe, as we continue. We're planning on continuing to do some communications, ongoing. I'm gonna meet with the principals and ask to get on their staff meetings with Chief Woodard, so we can answer questions with staff. So there'll be ongoing communications, as we go, we're planning another work session, hopefully between around February or March. We're gonna finalize that piece, but as another update, so that as we go, because as we start to finalize the books and do these things, we're learning. And as we learn, and we're working through ESSER, all of these pieces, CTE, all of these studies and grants. So we're doing a lot of learning. This is our year of discovery. And we talk about being an improvement, continuous improvement system. So we're gonna, everything we learn, we're gonna take into action and forward with long-term strategy. So as we continue to do this, we hope to have this be as transparent as we can throughout the whole way. And we'll try to do it in a variety of ways through the board meetings, through work sessions, through letters, through staff meetings. Because the more people understand, then the better informed people can actually, when they're providing input, can really help us make some good solid decisions. So, I just want to make sure that that's a commitment we as a team is making, to everybody throughout this process. And I will even say you were very honest, even when we talked with even Chief Warder, when we asked him to come on board. I shared with him everything that was happening, and so you have people here, and saying with special education, you have people here who want to do that work. So I just want to restate that to everybody, is everyone here is committed to do the work. So, but we can't do it, we don't want to do it in isolation, we want to do it in partnership. And that's with everybody, so we have to really, and we might not have all the best thoughts about that, so getting input on how to do that even might be necessary, and the best thinking about this, because of course, there's always more engagement, more work we can do on that, so we're open.
That actually brings about it, it's right for me, like what kind of is the, besides these work sessions, these opportunities, what kind of is the plan for input with students, from parents? I know that, you know, staff meetings is gonna be a great way to get staff input, making sure that you're kind of addressing some of those things, but or have y'all ever sort of think about what a plan might be, or that plan, are we not there yet?
Well, actually, one of the things I was thinking is like, well, first of all, writing some type of information for families, so give them some updates. But there was that in the community forum, where you guys announce time to sort of share with the community a broader message. I'm trying to work with getting on with meetings with some of the parent groups and details things, so this would be part of that topic. Not just this, but also the strategic, other things like that. So that's one thing. We're working on a student advisory group. I think this would be really great information for the student advisory group to do. And then finally, we are meeting with our labor groups and talking about strategy around thinking about priorities. And I think the board priorities, we're actually gonna start with those. So one of the commitments we have is starting with the board priorities in those conversations. But I'll just remind the board, it's 3 pages long. And so when we talk about that, you have now new information. So on this, you have new information, so I think it's important maybe for all of us to revisit that. And think through, is others still the same? And maybe they are, or maybe they need to be fleshed out a little bit, just thinking. I just want to just put that out there as a conversation. Especially as I use these board priorities in my conversations with other groups.
Yeah, I agree, they're very long, I think it's hard to really have focused priorities when there's so many priorities, and I think it's, of course, difficult because there are many different priorities, right? When we think about such a large system that we're in, but I know that this is kind of continued, every time we grapple with this, that's kind of been a challenge of mine, so I guess I wonder, like, what would be, what would be helpful, I mean, obviously, if we, and I guess this also pushing for the board, like, do we want to think about like what it would mean for like board this time that we are in right now? And then, you know, revisit them once we get into a different place a few years from now. Or do we, you know, almost like we're starting from, you know, just kind of start from you know, from almost the oh my gosh. Start from scratch almost and rebuild just a few and kind of really like hone in on 1 or 2 or 3 board priorities. And I know that kind of we restructure them in a way, so it looks like 3 priorities, but there's still only 1 priorities within each of those 3. But I mean, I definitely think that it would be useful and beneficial for us to narrow these in some way, and I'm not sure how to do that.
Well, the other thing is that, I mean, all these need to be reviewed in light of the fact that after January, we're gonna have a largely new board, so that either December or January, you know, would be that, I mean, that's natural, whether or not we were in the situation, we want to do it at that time anyway, just because there's a new.
Another time like if we were convinced having kind of a refresh for priority, like we're like January.
Yeah, because we're starting our conversations with our parties in groups around that time. We're gonna do some preemptive work with staff now, trying to get ahead of that, but, with staff meetings now, but some of them are more larger engagement. This, and more, interest discussions are gonna be happening in probably after November. So, but, mhm. I just wanted to let you know that that is something we have to sort of grapple with, because when everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So I just want to make sure that that we want to be really honored. And I also think that going back to the earlier conversations, listening to board comments about even the engagement we did in terms of putting it out there what the priorities are, I think wondering if we could use that to with the BTSA groups and things, just sort of hearing from them. From this, what are your priorities from this? I think that was one of the things I heard, that engagement probably could have been done differently. So that's where I'm interested in thinking about that with this work.
Well, and we always use this diagram when we go through the budget review process,
Yeah.
and, you know, when we present budget documents, the community, this is the only thing that they don't, all the accounting and others, you know, that just goes flying by, the only time we got comments was this section, so keeping up this section is, I think, that's a good way to
Yeah.
connect with the community rather than
Yeah,
just.
absolutely. Yeah.
Comment, because they do comment.
Right, well, and the parents and the families, we haven't done this before, you know, I've done presentations to many BTSA groups and family groups, and you know, the parents wanna know how this is gonna impact my child, number one, and so. And the students, I wanna know, how's this gonna impact me and my future and my goals, and so that's, I think, doing that work will be really critical.
Like I said, I just want to express appreciation to the staff, particularly those who've come on recently and are kind of what I'm hearing all in for this, because this is not an easy way, it's not an easy district to walk in the door in right now. And so I just appreciate you guys' willingness to hang in there on it and get us good, because I do believe, like you said, we will get through it, but it's gonna be a little tough work here as well.
And I appreciate all of you, by the way, just wanted to let you know. And I will add to, when we've already done some initial, I already went out to all the staff meetings, just to do initial, there was conversation, people were really interested in. Big, like, you know, that was a big thing that came up in some of the staff meetings, how is that calculated, how does that affect us, if we get, you know. So enrollment was something that people wanted information, you know, just even looking at, so what happens now when we have more students, how does that, you know, all the really good questions. So the staff have been really interested in this topic, and they're asking really good questions, and I think when we get more information out, we'll probably get more focused questions as we go, so.
And I'd like to encourage, there was really good, interesting op-ed in the Seattle Times yesterday from a parent in the Seattle School District who was criticizing the Seattle School District for not putting enough effort into advocating on Olympia through the funding system. I mean, there's a lot of focus on closing schools and reshuffling where kids go and all that, and that's all good discussion, but you know, they needed a lot. Her comment was, need to spend a lot more time counting on Olympia to you know, provide money, and I would echo that. So, you know, if people are looking for a way to put their energy, you know, push it down to Olympia and our representatives, you know, contact Representative Berquist, Representative Hackney, and raise the noise level on this, because we're gonna need it.
Are there any additional ways, kind of beyond what we're already doing, that could kind of like help folks like gear in the right direction or set up opportunities where that could happen? I don't even know if that's kind of within what we do, but I wondered.
Yeah, there's always kind of a gentle, I think what the law is about, you know, school districts in theory can't advocate for. So, but, you know, we can certainly put information out there. I mean, that's always what we can do, to say, you know, why are we in this situation? And one of the reasons is that they're not getting funding, so.
But BTSA groups can.
Yeah, absolutely.
BTSAs, and I know that's
Yeah.
something that they have a legislative.
Yeah.
So those of you who run BTSAs, your state PTSA actually has a legislative arm, in their work. And, I think this is a way that you can actually, this is something that has interested you. But, and remember PTSA is Parent Teacher Student Association. So there's lots of entities within that, but it's at least it's a one type of organization that you can advocate through, and then there's other ones too, like for disabilities, our county, there's a lot of things that we can point you to. There's a lot of established community groups and advocacy groups that actually do that work, and so, figuring out where you can fit within that is actually a good, because there's no point in reinventing,
Yeah.
because it's hard, I mean, it's really complex, you know, you do it. And it's super challenging, so I think working with a group of people that have already done that and learned some lessons is a great way to start.
Yeah, we can put them for the Immigrant Rights One America.
Yeah, that's fine.
Legal Education Voters is another one.
Yeah.
And the other thing I would say for a staff member, you know, every adult staff is like all the alphabet soup, so, you know, it's the WA representing the teachers, WASDA represent, which is where I spend a lot of time, the WASDA is the superintendents, WASDA is the business officers. I
AWS,
mean,
yeah,
yeah, all those groups, and they all do advocacy, so, you know, that's the other place to plug in. And I've been frustrated, a lot of those groups will not get to the equity side of it, as I've explained before, because it's complicated for them, but pushing more, particularly advocating for, you know, more money for the student need-based kinds of coaches, counselors, social workers, you know, all those kinds of folks, would be really helpful. Because legislators pay attention to them, trust me.
so I think that's something we can do is maybe figuring out how to maybe put some resources out for our community, maybe that's something I can do with her. Is figure out how to get some resources for families if they're interested in this topic. So. All right.
No, Dennis? Any thoughts, questions?
As I mentioned so far, Dennis and I will be raising the noise level at Watson on this subject in November 17th at the annual conference in Bellevue, so.
I almost wonder if maybe we can set up a time where we can do that in district as well. I think that would be cool, that could be an interesting way to, like, say. Great, you wanna help, here's the resources, I think that could be really positive, that would be very interesting.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to do it after we get some more feedback. We got a good time, it's Friday afternoon, it's I looked at the room, it's a big room, so hopefully we'll get a lot of people there to talk about it.
All right, what's, anything else on folks' mind around the budget? Obviously got plenty more time, but we certainly don't have to sit here to learn another further hour, 20 minutes. To folks are. Yeah, so again, just want to reiterate, particularly for those, you know, folks listening, either now or to the recording later. If you have questions, thoughts, comments, please direct those to Superintendent Pedroza. You can of course always email the board as well, but we'll just send that likely right along to Dr. Pedroza. Who will then engage the local team, but please do reach out. We want to, you know, again, reiterate our goal is to be as transparent as possible, which is possible with most things, so we're going to be transparent. So please don't hesitate to reach out.
I'm also really curious, let us know when the auditors figure out what the heck they're doing.
Yeah, please.
I was combing through their reports there, and it's kind of very superficial kind, which is, I've always been interested to hear what they did.
Yes, and as soon as that is done, Deb will reach out to the board, schedule an exit interview. It is, you know, two
Oh,
directors.
so the one that was the 30-31.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, they canceled it like a video information, so. But we are working on that finalization soon. So, and we'll be in touch, Dave. Sure, when that happens, Director Larson.
great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Chief Holder. Thank you very much.
All right, we have one action item for today, which is approval of the resolution number 937, which is approval of the newly elected and appointed board directors to attend the WASDA annual conference. Just kind of give a little background on this, so the WASDA conference, is, always the first, week or two of November, which aligns with when, the elections also take place. Maybe we're advocating one day that WASDA moves it just a little bit, but either way, this resolution would essentially allow, again, newly elected and our newly appointed, board member, Mr. Simpson, and we may have another one that we're interviews, next week, for, the future position that would be vacant in December. But it would allow these folks to go to this training opportunity, and there's not only is it a great conference for just learning, getting a good understanding of like ways in which we can contribute as board members, but there's also a lot of legally required trainings that we have to attend that is offered there and usually only there. So it's a great opportunity. We wanted to make sure that folks have the ability to do that. So that's what this resolution is for. And just so folks know too, that we are not spending extra money sending, this does not mean we're sending 8 board members, we're still only sending 5. For instance, Director Morris, who is transitioning out soon, someone, the incoming, director will go in her place. So we're sending only 5, again, so as we're talking about, budget and everything, we are really, mindful about how that impacts us as well, and ensuring that we're not putting ourselves in a position where we're spending extra resources. Also, our superintendent will be there, and so will, our student members, which is really exciting. So anyway, that's the kind of history of this resolution, and remember, so we have a motion to approve this resolution. So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, it is approved.
But on the end, I guess we will need to figure out how to get students up, so individual coordination.
Yeah, I was wondering about over there to Bellevue.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were working on that today.
okay.
We have a conference thing, so we figured out a little bit, something, we can figure that out. So,
Okay.
yeah, we'll work on it. All right.
This is on, I think it's Thursday night is the student dinner,
Mm,
so that's always good for them to go to,
yeah,
and then,
yeah,
yeah,
we can figure that out.
Okay.
We came up with a solution today,
okay,
so we'll probably work together on that, but that's okay. You guys help me figure that out, yeah,
perfect.
we'll figure that out.
All right, well, with that, we will adjourn our meeting.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you so much.